Have you ever really stopped to think about how we learn to read? I mean, not just making out the words, but actually getting a text. Turns out it's definitely not a one-size-fits-all kind of deal. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the whole craft of teaching reading and explore the hidden layers that turn those letters on a page into actual meaning in our heads. Okay, let's get into it.
You know, the writer Joseph Addison totally nailed it with this metaphor. Reading isn't some passive thing you just do. Nope, it's an active workout for your brain. It builds that mental muscle, right? It boosts your stamina and makes you way more intellectually flexible. Every book, every article, every poem, it's like a different piece of equipment at the gym, but for your mind.
So, if reading is a workout, then what's the training program? What are the exercises? And how do you tailor them for different people? Well, that is exactly what we're about to break down. Let's start with the most basic question of all. Before we get into the how, we really have to get a handle on the why. Why is reading literature such a huge part of education? Believe me, it's about so much more than just following a story.
Now, what's really cool here is how all these benefits are so interconnected. I mean, reading lets you step into someone else's shoes, right? That builds your cultural and historical understanding, and that helps you grow as a person because you're seeing all these different viewpoints. And while you're analyzing these complex ideas, your critical thinking gets sharper, which, surprise, makes you a better writer. And hey, let's not forget, at the end of the day, it's also just a fantastic source of fun and entertainment.
Okay, so to break down all this amazing stuff, we first need to know what we're working with. All literature, pretty much, can be sorted into a few main categories. You can think of them as the basic tools of the trade.
These are the four big ones, the fundamental building blocks. You've got drama, which is written to be performed on a stage. Then there's fiction, which is all born from the imagination. Nonfiction, that's your stuff rooted in real events and facts. And finally, poetry, which uses verse to really play with language and emotion. Just knowing these genres is the first step to figuring out how to approach any text.
And here, this is where things get really interesting. The way we teach someone to read in their native language is completely, totally different from how we teach someone who's learning it as a second language. Seriously, think of it as two entirely different workout routines, each designed for very different goals.
So here's the absolute crucial point. For a first language reader, what we call an L1 reader, they already know the language, right? The goal for them is to dive deep, to analyze, to critique, to really interact with the ideas inside the text. But for a second language, or L2 reader, that text is a tool for something else entirely. The main goal is to just acquire the language. The text becomes the way you learn vocabulary, grammar, all that good stuff.
So naturally, this difference in goals leads to building a totally different set of skills. In an L1 class, you're pushing for that high-level analysis, figuring out the author's tone, finding evidence to back up an argument. But in an L2 setting, it's all about practical survival skills. Can the student skim to get the main idea? Can they scan the page to find a specific name or date? These are the basic skills you need just to get through the text.
And this right here just shows the difference perfectly. Look at the questions we ask. For an L1 reader, we're asking how and why. These are questions that demand some real thought and analysis. Why did that character do that? How does the author create suspense? But for an L2 reader, we start with who, what, and where. These questions are just to make sure they've got the basic story down before we can even think about going any deeper.
So this whole L1 versus L2 thing sounds pretty clear, right? But how does it actually play out in real schools? Let's take a look at how different international school systems put these methods into practice.
The British IGCSE system is pretty flexible. It often mixes L1 and L2 methods depending on the students it has. The American system, on the other hand, usually treats reading as a pure L1 subject, focusing on that deep analysis right from the get-go. But the International Baccalaureate, or IB, is the most direct about it. It actually separates the two tracks. You have Language A, which is for L1 students studying literature, and then Language B, which is specifically designed for L2 students to acquire the language.
All right, so after looking at the why, the what, and the how, what's the big picture? What's the main takeaway from all of this? What does it all mean for the art of teaching someone how to read?
It really all comes down to this. A good reading workout plan can't be rigid. It's a responsive, flexible art. A great teacher knows that their whole approach has to adapt to where that student is on their own unique journey with the language, whether they're a native speaker ready to tear apart a complex theme, or a new learner who's just trying to find their footing.
So next time you pick up a book, just think about how you were taught to read it. Were you being trained for deep analysis or for language acquisition? Knowing about these hidden layers behind the teaching, well, it might just change how you see the meaning on the page.